Copper rivets on the silver screen in the golden age. There are two big points about this 501 series. We want to see how a pair of work pants became a symbol of freedom for several various groups. The other is how 20th century culture created a modern age. This is one of those episodes that explains how a big chunk of it all happened. This is the 1917 501 episode, now on Denim. I have this theory about the Levi's vintage clothing collection. The LVC line and Levi's history and the culture of denim jeans can be broken down into three eras. The historic, 1870 to 1944. The classic era, 1945 to 1966. And the retro era, 1967 to 1984, and even beyond. I believe this also works in relation to denim on film. Denim has been part of the wardrobe, a MacGuffin, a character throughout all the eras and film genres. The historic era begins with Western films in 1920 and carries on to this day. By the 1950s, the classic era was well represented with the cool kids wearing jeans. It wouldn't be until the 1980s that denim became the garment for any kind of character. Well, I think this theory nicely sliced up the history for thematic chronological reasons. There are also three hidden genres that emerged to pull denim onto the screen. Let's examine this together and see what you think. Historic Westerns era. Well-established film star and director Tom Mix had many westerns under his belt when he began filming The Untamed. But it was one small wardrobe change that would bring the two greatest elements of the 20th century culture together. Tom Mix was a real rider who could do his own stunts. He demanded a chase scene in every film. These were 10-minute shorts, by the way. The first king of cowboys on the silver screen was William Hart. Hart was trying to show the West with a sense of accuracy. Tom Mix was giving the audience the fantasy that would define the 20th century perception, and by 1920, Tom Mix was at the top. Sorry to fart in the beans, but yeah, denim in the Old West was kind of a fantasy. Some cool dudes did wear denim, but not as many as I would hope for. For Tom Mix, denim was this middle stage between real Western gear and the silky frocks he would be wearing by the end of the decade. Westerns would evolve, there would be subgenres, the rodeo stuntman type like Tom Mix or Ken Cooper. There was the Chicano identity expressed in Spanish language films, and especially with Leo Carrillo in the 1950s with Cisco Kid. Now, I watched a bunch of episodes of Cisco Kid, and I cannot tell if Leo Carrillo, as Pancho Villa, is wearing 501s, but I do see a bad guy wearing a Type 1 jacket. Then came the crooners. Bing Crosby, Gary Cooper. Musicals infected even the manliest westerns. Action star John Wayne did some musicals, like his breakout hit Stagecoach. The crooners were singing the American song to the audience of the world. For a few hours, you could feel the Old West in your heart. Whichever version delights you. There's plenty out there. Rhythm on the Range, Bing Crosby musical. Rhythm on the Range and Cowboy on the Lady all showed 1930s 501s cuffed high for that Western hero look. The audience must have noticed that these pants were different. They were cuffed high and had an interesting line running up the side. Selvage. Check out Kirk Douglas, the denim-clad warrior in Lonely Are the Brave. The Western genre is not limited to the settings of deserts and subtropic of the Southwest, but that's still where you'll see the most denim. Now, there were other Westerns taking place in Japan, like the Kurosawa films, which were influenced by the 1930s American Westerns, but in turn re-influenced 1960s American Westerns. There are the sci-fi Westerns, the futuristic New York City, and space. Levi's historian Tracy Panic amazingly discovered that it was a pair of white suppressed pants that actor Mark Hamill wore in his momentous performance as Tatooine-bound Luke Skywalker in 1977's A New Hope. Star Wars isn't essentially a Western. So are other epics of the late 1970s, such as Warriors, and into the 80s with Highlander. If you're gonna film a Western, you gotta ask yourself if it's pre or post 1873 before you start your wardrobe. The working man wore denim. Besides Western, there's another genre in the historic era, the working man. We see this with Charlie Chaplin in Modern Times and Henry Fonda in The Grapes of Wrath, both of whom are wearing the Stronghold bib and brace overalls. While I think it was Lee Brand who first invented this style, the Stronghold makes nice pairs, and they were located in Los Angeles, near the studios. Denim in the working class will remain a fixture for decades despite denim becoming high fashion. Norma Ray, 1979. Sally Field forms a labor union in this all-star denim-clad Oscar-winning film. Classic era cool kids. Hondo, 1953. John Wayne throws an 8-year-old kid into a pond, signifying the transition from historic westerns into classic cool kids. If you thought the Wild West was cruel, wait till you get a load of high school. Levi's has had two golden eras. The miners that made the product successful and the classic era of 1950s Americana when Levi's became synonymous with cool. 1953 was also the year that audiences saw the Wild One, and had to look like Brando with his leather jacket and, yes, 501 jeans. James Dean came to Hollywood to become the next Brando and ended up becoming his own legend. He's wearing 501s and Giant. When he played the coolest guy of all time in Rebel Without a Cause, he was wearing Lee 101. And from my knowledge, he wore Lee in his private life. I hope to do a Lee 101 saga someday and plaster him all over it. An interesting fact about the wardrobe for Rebel Without a Cause was Sal Mineo had a pair of 501s with his name on it for playing Pluto, but the producers wanted the character to appear less masculine, so he never wore them jeans in the film. He has trousers instead. Cut to 1960 and Sal Mineo is wearing 501s as the bad boy Dino. Apparently, denim induces testosterone. It's hard to say who sold more 501s at this time, Kerouac, Brando, the Duke, but the most black Levi's were sold once Elvis debuted them in his Jailhouse Rock video. Then he did the musical Loving You and showed off the amazing indigo in Technicolor. The history of music in Levi's predates film by 6 years, as the coveralls were sung about in 1914 as a Christmas song. And country musicians were wearing denim before Elvis, and they probably inspired his look. Marilyn has some 501s on in Clash by Night, River of No Return, and The Misfits. She's got some westerns, but it's really her personal branding that sold the Levi's. Marilyn wasn't the only celebrity to sell Lady Levi's. Liz Taylor, Debbie Reynolds, Jane Birkin, and Betty Grable were all here to let you know that Levi's are an essential part of the wardrobe for fun. As the 50s rolled into a doobie called the Era of Love, we got a few of the absolute coolest human beings to grace the screen. Steve McQueen, rocking all layers of denim. And check out his shirt with surfer pockets and Baby the Rain Must Fall. Paul Newman. Give him a lot of credit for Cool Hand Luke in The Prisoner. The prisoner aspect is another subgenre of the denim eras. Being incarcerated, being a criminal, being low class, this is what denim was signifying. And you can see Jack Nicholson is wearing jeans and a leather jacket in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Items which they quickly take away from him, but they're there to express an idea of individuality. This is what the rebel wears. A good friend of Paul Newman's, Robert Redford, makes the Wrangler jacket the most popular, perhaps through his private life. We have Martin Sheen, especially his performance in Badlands. This is the best example of denim being a MacGuffin, in my opinion, and to this date. The jacket is an extension of the protagonist's character and is displayed with glorious lighting and attention. This is the film I most recommend for denim on film. Badland combines westerns, teenage angst, criminals, and even horror into one badass film. The Cool Kids era was a golden age for denim. These movies are still selling 501s and other denim to this day. My hometown of Los Angeles is plastered with the faces of these actors. Leather jackets and plain white tees made out pretty nicely too. This was a new time. Post-industrial, not yet digital. It was the nuclear age. Kids and teens were becoming consumers and voiced desires. But it also became a weapon in the war of good versus evil. Freedom-loving Americans wore jeans. Skinny commie bastards were in slacks. Retro everybody era. This is something we see every day on screen to this day. Normal folks, ordinary characters, background talent, wearing 501s and other denim jeans, just like a normal thing. But tracing this back in time to the 60s was pretty hard. That's because denim represents cool so well that wardrobe departments avoided it for fear of confusing the character for someone much more cool and interesting. I need to thank the horror genre here, as I have a theory about this. Early slasher films didn't have the budget for extra clothes, so the actors wore their own. Look at Texas Chainsaw Massacre, 1974. Leatherface, and another killer wearing denim. Jeans were definitely taken to their limits in 2020's slacks. The jeans that kill you. 1980, we have Ordinary People. Redford directed this one. A rich, young, disturbed teen that casually wears jeans. This makes him seem younger. He's not low class, he's not a criminal. He would be cool if it weren't for the material of the story. And so it is really one of those films that breaks that boundaries. But then throughout the 80s, teens in the backgrounds wore jeans. Cut to late 80s, we have When Harry Met Sally. And they show Billy Crystal wearing a pair of orange tabbed Levi's. At first, this makes him look younger. His character is supposed to be aged 12 years younger than he is. But then later on, he's wearing the same jeans, but with a blazer or a sweater in the late 80s. And it is acceptable attire almost anywhere. And perhaps one of the number one Levi's promoted films, and something I definitely need to talk about, is The Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants. As this film stands to bring the jeans into the new MacGuffin stage. Denim has created its niche in film, and Levi's is not slowing down on encircling the industry from all ends. The House of Strauss in Los Angeles is perhaps a dream gig for someone like myself, getting Levi's into films, combining my two great loves and knowledge. Some of the hype they do can be seen in shows like Daisy Jones and the Six. And then you can go and buy the item from their line, if it's still available. For the recent Dylan biopic, A Complete Unknown, Levi's vintage clothing line collaborated with the wardrobe department. And in my guesstimate, the future of denim on screen will be how it is used to represent past times and how we can provide accurate wardrobes for the films. The rest of it will use jeans ubiquitously for whichever characters need to look cool, tough, lower class, or just plain anybody. LVC Variations. Does this come in a rigid? Yes, 3 kinds of rigid. There's an 001, it says made in Turkey. 002, this is the Cone Mills denim made in the USA in a lighter blue. And then the 009. 009 and the LVC lines are usually reserved for the rigid models. This is a darker dyed, made in the USA, supposedly Amaskag denim. So I'm not sure what the deal truly is. It's nice if they really were made of 70-year-old backstock denim. And I've discussed this dilemma in the 1875 video. Both the 002 and 009 models come with an orange paper box reminiscent of a proto-flasher. I have not seen evidence that this was historically accurate, but it might have been. In details and fit, these should be indistinguishable from the 1915s. I see no discussing details that would be different. Them Homers. Guaranteed not to rip, or else. Or else what? Well, what befell this pair of jeans is beyond me. I guess this would be considered a lemon in car terms. But Homer Campbell saw his pair of Levi's through for 3 years, gathering wear and many tears. Homer was, just like a lot of folks watching this channel, a true 501 guy. And he decided that Ellis & Co. needed to know about the malfunctioning wardrobe of the century. The pair was shipped to San Francisco with a letter. Homer's pair of jeans sat in a warehouse and collected some dust other than the occasional eyeballs who might have had a laugh at the amount of stitching and patching. The Homers really came to light when Levi's partnered with Disney to be displayed as the star of Disneyland's Frontierland when it opened in 1955. More recently, Homer has traveled to Germany to showcase at the museum with an exhibit of California culture. He has been reproduced in the LVC line at least 5 times, 2003, 2008, 2012, and most recently in 2023, making them one of the most reproduced vault items. Sometimes they are credited as 1918. Most recently it was 1917, which works for this video. The pair is often sold with a tote bag, sometimes called the Celebration Pack. The 2023 version has an antique paper quality. And of course, you get the letter with it too. I'm gonna admit I needed a little AI help, OCR help with reading this. But this is what they give to the customers, and apparently Homer's own handwriting. Constellation, Arizona, February 9th, 1920. To Levi Strauss & Company, San Francisco, California. Gentlemen, please find enclosed 1 pair of your overalls, which I am sending you, so that the head of your fabric department may determine what is wrong. I have purchased these overalls from the Brayton Commercial Company of Wickenburg, Arizona, in the early part of 1917, and I have worn them every day except Sunday. Since that time, and for some reason which I wish you would explain why, they have gone to pieces. I have worn nothing but Levi Strauss overalls for the last 30 years, and this pair has not given me the service that I have gotten out of some of your overalls in the past. I know that it is your aim to place a superior article on the market, and consider it my duty to help you in any way that I can. Please consider this, and let me know if the fault is mine. Truly yours, Homer Campbell, Constellation, Arizona. This was an episode I was excited to make for a while. The genres that helped move denim along: westerns, working man, cool kids, prison films, horror, and everybody else. What do you think of my theory about genres? How do you like seeing denim on film? Have you got a favorite MacGuffin film? Which films would you have included? Have you got the Homers? What occasions do you wear them to? Thanks to all my Patreon members. I'm Den. Thanks for watching. Love your jeans.